So we're going to do a bit of a sew along, so if anybody's interested, this is what we're going to be making. So this skirt, I'll show you the pattern in a minute, can be made in 3 lengths. So this, when we see the pattern, this is length B, so this is the medium length, it's just below the knee, and it's got pockets that are relatively huge. Can certainly fit a phone and things like that with no problems in both side seams. So it's got 2 pockets and a waistband and a zip in the centre back and some pleats at the front. I've also made it in the shorter length, so on the pattern this is A. Okay, so this is a little bit above the knee. Okay, but still entirely reasonable for work. And there's a 3rd length which is ankle length that you could make if you were going out. Okay, so this is the pattern. It's from the Vogue collection. It's Vogue 1990. There's 2 sets of sizes. So this is A5, which is a multi-size pattern from 6 to 14, and then I think there's E5, which is multi-sizes from 16 up. And on the back of the pattern, it's got all the details in terms of how much material you need to buy. On the instructions, it tells you what the finished measurements are, particularly the waist measurements. In fact, it's here. So for a size 12, these are the finished garment measurements in terms of length. Okay, depending on what you want to wear it for, these are the fabric choices. So I've made it in cotton and poplin, which is the type of cotton. Linen will crease more. If you wanted to make it as an evening skirt, you could make it in a lightweight satin, for example. So I've just made this in sort of relatively plain cotton. Depending on how big your size you're making and how wide your material is that you buy, it tends to come in 2 widths, 115 or 150 centimetres, or 45 or 60 inches. So I make a 12 in this. It fits very true to size. So I've made a 12. You need to make a size that will fit based on the garment measurements rather than the size you would buy in the shop. So this, for me, would need either 1.8 or 1.3 metres of fabric, depending on how wide the fabric was to start with. You also need some fusible interfacing. If you went to a fabric shop, they'd just be able to sell you that, and you need a 7-inch zipper in the same sort of colour as the fabric you choose, and a hook and an eye fastening to go at the top of the zip. Okay, here are the measurements for this skirt. So for a 12, that will fit a 26.5-inch waist, 36-inch hip, and it fits pretty much spot on. It's one of the best fitted skirts that I've made. It fits really very nicely. So take your measurements. So A5 pattern will take you up to a size, anything up to a 14, and 16 to 22 you'll need the E5 version of the pattern. Then once you've got your pattern, you need to cut out all your pattern pieces. So whatever length you're making, you need to cut at the front, the back, the pockets and the waistband. And then I didn't cut here, so this is the shorter version. This is the medium-sized version. I have cut there because I'm not intending to make this in the long size. If you want to keep it as a variable pattern, you can trace this off and cut a smaller one. So you're not actually cutting out, so cut out the biggest size, the longest size, and then just mark the 2 other heights, so you've got the options, and you cut around the pattern markings you can see here. that this would be a 6, this would be an 8, this would be a 10, and this one here would be a 12, and cut all the way around based on whichever size garment you're making. So you should end up with a back piece, a front piece, pockets, and waistband. So depending on whether you're making the short version, the medium length version, or the long version, and depending on whether you've got 115 or 150 centimetre width fabric, there's various different ways of laying out your pattern pieces to cut your garment. All of these instructions are basically, if the pattern piece is white, then that's the right side of the pattern, and here they've flipped the pattern over, so you're cutting on a single thickness of fabric. So this is one selve edge where it's come off the loom, and the other selve edge where it's come off the loom, and you're cutting, and you need to reverse one piece, otherwise you end up with two identical pieces rather than facing pieces. So you can see here where they've turned the pattern piece over. If the material is shown in black, that's the right side of the fabric, and if it's shown in white, that's the wrong side of the fabric. So you work out which size you're making, how wide your fabric is, and then lay out all your pieces in accordance with the pattern layout. This is the lining for the pocket, or for the inside of the waistband. I usually make the insides of my pockets in the same fabric as the skirt, so you can cut those out of fabric rather than lining material. It tends to, for a work skirt, makes the pockets a bit more robust. And you also need some interfacing, and that gives the waistband some structure and stops it collapsing in. So what we'll do next is, the next tutorial will be how to set up the machine and sew all these pattern pieces together.